Charging documents. Jason Billingsley raped, set 2 on fire before murder of Baltimore Tech CEO Baltimore. An arrest warrant was issued on September 20 for a rape and arson investigation in West Baltimore, 5 days before 26-year-old Tech CEO Pava LaPere was found dead in her Mount Vernon apartment. Police said. Jason Billingsley, a 32-year-old Baltimore man, is accused of both crimes. Billingsley, who is a registered sex offender and a convicted felon, was taken into custody late Wednesday at a train station in Bowie. Police said detectives were searching for Billingsley after he allegedly set a fire on September 19 in the 800 block of Edmonson Avenue. It was initially reported as an arson, but Baltimore Police Acting Commissioner Richard Worley confirmed Thursday that a rape investigation was underway in the incident. A man and a woman were burned and left critically injured. A 5-year-old was found unharmed in a separate room in the 3-story row home. According to charging documents obtained by WJZ, a woman said a man who identified himself as maintenance kicked in the front door and pointed a gun at her head, duct-taped her and handcuffed another person in the home. Documents say that the suspect raped her multiple times, cut her neck, and then poured an unknown liquid on them and set them on fire. A neighbor, who asked not to be identified, told WJZ that she woke up to the sound of a smoke detector and unforgettable screaming. "I heard her screaming and banging on the grate. Help her. Get out, help her," the neighbor said. "I screamed through the building to see if there was anyone who could help me help her." Family, friends describe murdered Baltimore Tech CEO Pava LaPere as a visionary ahead of her time. That's when she said she realized her building was on fire. And the neighbor who resided in the basement was trapped. People from across the street came over and got her grate off, and got her out, and pulled the guy who was with her out, the neighbor said. By the time firefighters arrived to extinguish the flames, the man and woman had been pulled to safety from the basement window. But neighbors said something didn't seem right. He had handcuffs, and his leg was bleeding, and his feet were taped, a neighbor said. Worley said the attack was targeted and that Billingsley had access to the home on Edmonson Avenue because he worked there. "We know that the victim and suspect were known to each other," Worley said. "We know that the suspect did not break into the building as he worked at the location. We have evidence to believe the victims of Edmonson Avenue were targeted by the suspect, that the suspect knew the victims and he went into that location for a criminal reason." Security cameras captured the suspect inside the home wearing a face mask, pointing a gun and grabbing the woman. Billingsley, who was the location's maintenance worker, was identified after he was found in the area fixing things, doing yard work and walking inside the home. Worley said they didn't immediately release information about the rape and arson investigation because it wasn't deemed as a random attack. He had access to the home. He was allowed in the apartment. So there was no reason to believe that he was out committing random acts, Worley said. "Had we believed that the flyer would have gone out to everyone on September 20 as soon as we got the warrant." Days later, police said Billingsley was named as a suspect in LaPere's murder. LaPere, who co-founded Ecomap Technologies, a company that says it digitizes ecosystems with its proprietary technology, was believed to have been killed on September 22. She was reported missing on September 25, the same day her body was found at the Baltimore apartment. Baltimore police were working with federal and local authorities to find Billingsley before LaPere was killed, Worley said. Shortly before police publicly identified Billingsley as the suspect in LaPere's death on Tuesday, authorities were within 88 meters of catching the suspect, Worley said. But he eluded their capture. "We never got close enough," Worley said. 88 meters is the closest I believe we got, which is about 300 feet, which is about the size of a football field, and that's why we had the delay for the press conference, because we knew where he was at, and we were looking for him. Worley said that during the press conference, the devices police were tracking became disconnected and the suspect was using other ways to communicate. Worley refused to speculate that if police had notified the public sooner after the arson, LaPere's murder may have been avoided. "I'm not going to speculate if it could have prevented her death," Worley said. "As soon as we realized that there was a public safety, we had the press conference." Worley also said the victims in Edmonson Avenue were being protected while Billingsley was on the loose. There were some victims from Edmonson Avenue that were still out, Worley said. One was at the hospital. One was at their location. We had to get them protection if we were going to put that information out because we didn't know what this guy was going to do. According to court records, Billingsley at 18 pleaded guilty to first-degree assault in 2009. He was ultimately given 2 years of supervised probation but violated the terms and was convicted in a second-degree assault case in 2011, where he served a 2-year prison sentence. After being released, Billingsley was convicted of a rape attempt a mere 3 months later. A judge handed down a 30-year sentence, with an expected 2043 release date. However, 16 years of the sentence was suspended, and he was given 5 years of supervised probation. He was paroled in October 2022. According to Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, it is very clear that this individual poses a substantial danger, that he had been non-compliant and was clearly violating the terms of his supervision after being released, Scott said, and that alone should be enough to make sure that we keep him off the streets. Worley said Billingsley had been compliant with his reporting as a registered sex offender until he failed to show up Monday. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than September 20 warrant. Since then, he has continued to be our #1 priority until his capture last night. Tracked him all the way until yesterday. I'm aware the past few days have been unnerving for our citizens, and I sincerely hope we are able to find a little bit of peace today. Our priority will always be the safety of our residents and apprehending those individuals responsible for those crimes. Baltimore, we are going to put this violent, repeat criminal offender back in jail where he belongs. Now let's all work together to make sure that he stays there. That through witness testimony and surveillance, we were able to develop an identity of the suspect and a warrant was issued for him for Edmonton Avenue within hours. I can confirm that the warrant was a priority, and we brought in our law enforcement partners from U.S. Marshals, as well as a flyer was distributed to every officer in the Baltimore Police Department. We partners were working to apprehend the suspect. This includes tracking his phone, looking at financial transactions, looking at social media, surveilling known addresses, speaking to multi-pay witnesses and listening to his previous jail calls. Several times tracked within a close proximity but was able to elude CCA. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than. The search began for Billingsley after he was identified as a suspect in a fire that left 3 injured on September 19 in the 800 block of Edmonson Avenue. It was initially reported as an arson, but Worley confirmed Thursday that a rape investigation was underway in the incident. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than. Worley said Billingsley knew the victims of the arson and rape and worked in that building. He was identified as the suspect and an arrest warrant was filed within hours of the fire, Worley said. A man and woman were critically injured, and a 5-year-old child was also hospitalized with minor injuries, fire officials said. The adults were pulled to safety from the basement window by neighbors who said the man appeared to have been bound. He had handcuffs, and his leg was bleeding, and his feet were taped, a neighbor told WJZ last Tuesday. Baltimore police were working with federal and local authorities to find Billingsley before LaPere was killed, Worley said. Shortly before police publicly identified Billingsley as the suspect in LaPere's death on Tuesday, authorities were within 88 meters of catching the suspect, Worley said, but he eluded their capture. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than. Matthew Silverman, U.S. Marshal, Maryland, Chief Deputy. We were able to secure this individual without any further incidents. This arrest truly speaks to the power of our public interest and safety partnerships with each one of you. I'm not going to speculate if could have prevented her death. As soon as we realized that there was a public safety, we had the press conference. This first incident on Edmonson Avenue, it was not a random act. Had it been a random act, we would have put out a flyer right away saying that this individual was on the loose committing random acts. Time equals 400 Ms. greater than. We know pretty much why he went into that house on Edmonson Avenue and why he committed those acts. He was familiar with the victims. I am not going to say too much more because I don't want to talk bad about victims. We were able to arrest this Violent criminal without incident or further loss of life. He was there for a reason, and at that point, our detectives and everyone in the department decided that he was. We didn't think at that he was committing random acts because he had been out since October 2022 and we had no incidents that he has been connected to. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than we believe it was a targeted attack on the victims that he victimized that day. If we made a mistake, I'd tell you we made a mistake like I did in Brooklyn. I don't think we made a mistake in this case. I think our detectives made the same decision we make every single time based on the facts and circumstances that we have, and as soon as we felt he committed an act that seemed to be random, that we still don't know connections, we put the flyer out. He had access to the apartment. He was allowed in the apartment. So there was no reason to believe that he was out committing random acts. Had we believed that, the flyer would have went out to everyone on September 20th as soon as we got the warrant. Refused to ask knowledge incident at Pressy. Think I answered that question earlier because at that time, we were tracking him. There were some victims from Edmonson Avenue that were still out. One was at the hospital. One was at their location. We had to get them protection if we were going to put that information out because we didn't know what this guy was going to do. Once he saw press conference, we didn't know where he was going to go. That's why it was delayed 30 minutes. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than as soon as we confirmed that he was the suspect in both cases, we knew he was fleeing, so we had to get it out as soon as possible. My hope is that we can give a sense of closure to the city of Baltimore, the victims of all of his crimes and the victim's family. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than we never got close enough. 88 meters is the closest I believe we got, which is about 300 feet, which is about the size of a football field, and that's why we had the delay for the press conference because we knew where he was at, and we were looking for him. He just disappeared. Obed Tgeb. We weren't able to track him. As soon as the press conference happened, the devices we're tracking him on were disconnected and he started using other means to communicate. Baltimore County theft of a gun. We know he didn't steal someone's gun. We knew he had access to guns and said he would be D. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than mayor. Rapists shouldn't be let out early. When you rape someone's daughter, son, their wife, you should not get out early, period, for that kind of offense. We gave you our word that we would not stop until we brought this individual in and that we exhausted every resource to make sure that we brought him in to keep our residents safe. It is very clear that this individual posed a substantial danger and that he was non-compliant, was clearly violating the terms of his supervision after being released. That alone should be enough to make sure that we keep him off the streets. Every single life in Baltimore matters. Those individuals who he impacted in the other incidents matter. We will continue to make sure we are working with our state's attorney and our partners to make sure that he does not get that same fate again. That he does not get back out here on the streets of Baltimore with the opportunity to harm others. I hope this sends a message to everyone who likes to commit these coward acts to know that we will not tolerate it and we will pull you off the streets of Baltimore. Residents should trust the police department to do their work because they do that work each and every day. It was the Baltimore Police Department that did the work that led to the initial case that he was in prison for, and what residents of Baltimore should be doing is questioning why he was let out and how that happened, and that's not on the police department. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than they are the ones out here arresting folks for murder, taking record numbers of guns off the street, reducing the number of homicides. They are doing that work. But we're talking about a system that we also have to deal with because they didn't decide to let this sociopath back out on the streets of Baltimore. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than. I think that every single case is different. When you go and look at the facts of that original case, you will agree that he should have been let out on the streets. We have to continuously look at things as they are, but the facts as they are for this case. Someone who committed rape, he shouldn't have been out on the streets. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than. Bates. If and when the grand jury gives us the indictments, my office will file life without the possibility of parole. Our hope and goal is, if this individual is found guilty in a court of law, that this individual will never get out and see the light of day and hurt the citizens again. Time equals 400 ms. greater than we immediately went back and pulled the file and pulling the file. What we definitely noticed was that a plea was given and the plea was a little bit below guidelines. Different administration in 2016. Legislation says that if you do a sex offense, or rape, or a sexual assault on someone 16 or younger, you are not eligible for diminishing credits.